This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome to the Xcast X-Files Podwatch. This is episode 54 of our series, and today we're having a look at Schizogeny and Chinga. I'm your host today, Carl Sweeney, and I'm joined by Tanya Hernandez. Hi, Tanya.
Hello again. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. It's been a while. We had a good chat talking about Humbug.
Yes.
That was months and months ago now.
Yep.
Yeah, really good to speak to you again. So we're in the middle of season 5 here, Tanya. Is season 5 one of your favourites?
I would say is probably the peak of the show. I think that's where they had like the best use of the mythology. They had some of the best like standalones, and then I know they had some like standout like writers that came on, especially one of the two that we're going to talk about, special guest writers and stuff. So I think it had a really good cohesion in this season. So I think fifth season is probably I would call it the peak of the show.
Yeah, I think it's very cohesive too, because like it's just like the series is churning out these episodes, and they look like the X-Files, they sound like the X-Files. Do you know what I mean? Like when you think of the X-Files, it's this kind of era that kind of comes to mind for me. They still got the Vancouver locations, obviously, but time's running out a bit on that. But anyway, let's have a talk about this first episode then, which is Schizogeny, which is the 9th episode of the season, and it was broadcast for the first time in January 98. This one was written by Jessica Scott and Mike Wallager, and directed by Ralph Hemmecker. It is the episode in which the agents investigate the murder of a man seemingly killed by his stepson. However, all is not as it seems in an installment referred to by many as the Killer Trees episode. Mm-hmm. So, Tanya, your general thoughts on this episode? Are you a fan?
To be honest, when I went to put it in, to put the disc in my player, I was like, I don't really remember this episode. And then I watched it and I'm like, okay, now I know why I don't remember this episode. I don't think this was a very good Monster of the Week episode. I mean, it had some interesting elements with, the abuse, like, talking about like abused kids and stuff like that. But I don't think it really hit its mark with the monster part of it. I wrote down a note that I don't even understand why Mulder and Scully were called in for this case at all, to be honest with you. It outside of him noticing, how the soil was eaten and shit and stuff like that, like there's nothing like X-Filey about it on the surface. So I don't even know how he even got this case sent to them, unless they were like, we don't have any other FBI agents to deal with this problem, so I guess we'll send you guys. That's the only way I could think of how they ended up all the way in the middle of nowhere at place with orchards and stuff dealing with this case, like, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, there definitely are some episodes where it's pretty tenuous, the fact that they get called on the scene. I don't really have a problem with this episode. I mean, it's not going to win any awards, it's not going to be on any fans' list of favourites, but it's just never bothered me.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, it just was there. Like, I totally forgot about it. Like, it wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't, like, it could have been more interesting, but I don't know, I just didn't like the way it ended up,
I still think at this point, there's some good atmosphere. It's quite eerie in places. Maybe the story's got some holes and whatever, but
yeah, I think it had some really big holes. I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, someone's controlling the trees and stuff like that, okay, and we discover, it's this, therapist who was abused and stuff, but then, like, there's no connection as to how she's controlling the trees. Like, is she from a line of witches? Is she found some kind of magical tome? Or, like, nothing. Like, it's just like, oh, she could just commune with the trees, and it's like, okay. It was like, I don't know, I didn't understand it. Like, I don't know how her abuse, her relationship with her father ended up culminating in her developing a relationship with the trees that she can control them and kill people with them. I just like, I was like, that was pretty blah.
Yeah, it's quite a big leap, isn't it? And I think I agree. I think like towards the end of the episode, definitely, some holes become apparent. Maybe it starts to fall apart a little bit. But I guess the early part of the episode is all right. What do you think then? Because like the twist is that woman, Karen, is that she's making other people believe they're being abused, isn't it? So, like you say, these themes of child abuse. How well do you think it handled those themes? How sensitive was it? That kind of thing.
Again, I think it started off interesting, like with the I don't even remember the kid's name.
Bobby, maybe.
Bobby, yeah. That he was kind of the loner at school, and kids picked on him, and he had the stepfather that kind of took his frustrations out on him, and how he uses this possible story about him killing him as a way to kind of stand up to his bullies and stuff. Like I thought that was interesting. I don't know if the actor playing the teenager pulled it off really well. I thought he reminded me of like a Giovanni Ribisi's character in DPO, but like the secondhand store version. I don't think it was as effective as Giovanni Ribisi, probably because Giovanni Ribisi is a better actor. I did like that, but then it, like I said, when you start introducing like this therapist and why she's giving, suggestions like that to them, I don't know, it kind of like fell apart for me,
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate, because I would see that as a really interesting topic, and how Scully and Mulder like jump on that right away. They're like, is there something going on here? Like it almost turns into like a Law and Order episode at that point, which is interesting. But then it just, I think it, once you get to the therapist and stuff, I felt like the story just kind of fell apart after that.
The woman who plays the therapist is interesting. She's called Sarah Jane Redmond. I don't know if you ever watched Millennium, Tanya, but she had an interesting recurring role on that series as a character called Lucy Butler.
I watched Millennium, but not as religiously as the X-Files.
Yeah, she appeared in like a handful of episodes. She was very good on Millennium.
Okay.
And she appears again in I Want to Believe, actually.
Really?
She has a very small role. She's like a special agent in charge at one point. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think she was like well liked, by the 1013 crew. So it's kind of cool that she pops up here. Like you say, there's some of the stuff is not it's kind of hard to swallow with a therapist, I suppose.
Yeah, like I think it would have been interesting, but like the whole twist with her being the one controlling everything, and like no reason or hint of a reason as to how she can do this, like it just kind of is like. And again, it almost reminds me of like Mrs. Paddock, like she's the one controlling nature and stuff, and you get it, like she's kind of, maybe she's a part of like a witchcraft type of thing. Like at least you get that little hint, not that it's a concrete answer, but you get that's where she has this ability from. But here it's just like, okay, she was abused and she's basically abusing her patients.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's, oh yeah, she can control the trees, and I'm like, okay, where did that come from? Like, I thought maybe when the hatchet guy that looked like that was kind of the red herring. You think he's the one that's doing it, and he's actually like there to try to protect them, even though he didn't protect the stepfather when he was right there. You think, okay, maybe he's like gonna say something because he has an accent, so maybe he's gonna say they're from like some Eastern European country that believed in something, and there's nothing. Like it's just that guy's like, okay, it's over, and he like just dips out. Like, okay, okay, I guess. Like it was weird. I thought it was odd.
Oh, that stuff with that man, yeah, that definitely is odd. That kind of
yeah, he
very
was just
strange.
like creeping around, and then he just like chops her head off, and he's like, "Okay, it's done," and he just dips out. Like, doesn't even help Mulder get out the mud or anything. Like, okay, thanks, guy.
Definitely. What about Mulder and Scully then? Because this is one of those episodes. It feels to me like they're kind of just going through the motions a bit. It's not a particularly demanding episode for the actors or anything like that. No,
I felt like it could have been a different set of agents on this job, to be honest with you, which is unfortunate. I mean, David and Gillian do fine. They're playing their characters, but there was nothing fantastic or nothing like, oh wow, they really did this really nice, or any character interaction between them. Like, there was nothing even between the characters. Like, maybe you could get those moments, you know, where they're like, ooh, you know, those shippy moments. There was nothing. They were just, like, on a case, trying to figure it out, you know, and just blah, 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 blah. You know, it's, like I said, that's how I feel about this episode. I just threw it in the back of my head and forgot about it, basically.
Yeah, well, except it has the moment where Mulder climbs the tree, which I know a lot of fans quite like that interaction between the two of them.
Yeah, yeah, where he's like, you know, does this display turn you on or something like that, yeah. Yeah, that's the only moment, which out of the entire episode, that's the only, like, cute, fun Mulder Scully moment. So it's unfortunate that it's in this forgettable episode.
I mean, I basically agree. I think I like it a little bit more than you do. I think I'm just a sucker for, like, you know, there's a creepy house,
right.
the orchard's quite a nice setting and stuff. It's never going to be a great episode. It's not got any real pedigree. You know, It's got unknown, you know, writers we don't know. It's directed by somebody who's not, you know, particularly well known on the X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
I think this director did some Millennium episodes.
Okay.
I'd have to double check that.
Like, even if they had Frank Black show up in this, it probably would have been better, you know? Or something about the land being a mystical place at one point, or rumored, or Indian burial ground. Something, and it's just like, oh, it's just these trees.
So, Chinga is episode 10 of season 5, and this one was broadcast in February of '98. This is written by Stephen King and Chris Carter, directed by Kim Manners, and this is the episode that sees Scully take a well-deserved vacation.
Yes.
Before becoming embroiled in a case involving victims who have wounded themselves, and she soon realises that a young girl and her doll are involved. So, just before we talk about the episode, are you a Stephen King fan?
Yes.
Tanya?
Yes, I am. I mean, I've read a couple of his books. I've seen tons of his movies multiple times, so I was very excited when they did announce this was one of those episodes in the season that they had special writers, like guest star writers, and Stephen King was of course one of them, and so I was very excited to see this episode, and it is one of I did enjoy this episode. I know some people had a problem with it. For me, it's definitely one of my faves.
I'd imagine this was quite a big event at the time. I mean, I saw it when it aired, but I can't really remember how it was advertised and everything. But I just imagine having Stephen King credited on the X-Files would have been a big thing.
Yeah, I remember all the advertising kept pushing the master of horror, Stephen King, and the X-Files. Like, you know, basically like that.
Yeah. So before I want to talk a bit more about his involvement, but just tell me like exactly what it is you like about the episode then before we get back to him, you know.
So this much better than the previous episode, but this one again has more of that interaction between it's a serious case, but there's this funny, like, weird interaction between Mulder and Scully, and you see how much, you know, Mulder, like, relies on Scully's presence in this episode, which is hilarious. I thought it was so funny, and it kind of mirrors War of the Cophages, the cockroach episode. That's when Scully's always calling Mulder, so this time it's Mulder always calling Scully. So I thought it was fun. It was a fun episode, despite it being also kind of creepy. You know, anything with a doll that's like acting weird and stuff is always creepy. So I did enjoy this one a lot.
Yeah, I quite like this one too. The thing with Stephen King was so it's written by King and Chris Carter. I think what happened was that Chris Carter rewrote Stephen King's original script quite a bit.
Right.
Because he said that King didn't really get the Mulder Scully interaction spot on. So it's interesting that you like, you know, you really like the Mulder Scully stuff. So it sounds like Carter added or changed quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Stephen King's original script is actually online, so people can find.
Oh,
I think
really?
it's pretty. Yeah, I think it's actually quite different, and someday I'm going to sit down and read the whole thing. But somewhere I found an article that kind of breaks down the differences.
Oh, okay. I definitely got to check that out.
Yeah, I don't have the link or anything off the top of my head, but it's out there. Another story I heard about how this one was made was that, you know, Gillian Anderson's performance, she was kind of playing it for laughs quite a bit, and I think Carter rang her up and said, "Look, this is not supposed to be as funny as you're playing it," you know, and kind of told her to change course, really. So I don't know. Did you find like the tone jarring at all? It doesn't sound like you did.
I didn't. I liked it because I liked that, she's trying to go on a vacation and take a break from this intense work environment and this intense guy, and she just can't get away from it because while she's on vacation, he's calling her. She's like, I'm done. Talk to you later. See you on Monday. And then, like, next thing you know, she comes across these people with these scratches on their eyes. I took a note that I don't know if you noticed this too, but it was a fantastic moment where she sees the guy, she gets out the car, so she has her really relaxed main thing. She has her glasses on. She does a reverse Superman where she takes her blazer out of the car, swings it around her, puts it on, and takes her glasses off so that she goes into Scully mode. And I freaking loved it because it was literally a reverse Superman. Instead of, how Superman takes off everything, she puts everything back on and takes the glasses off instead, it was such a great, I don't know if they did it on purpose, but I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, it's a reverse Superman. I love it. And she goes straight into Scully mode where like a few moments before she was just in her jeans. She had the top down on her Mustang, she's just chilling. And right away she has to go. And I'm like, why has she got the blazer there in the first place? She doesn't have, usually she has like a parka or something when she goes out to the woods and stuff. But she has her blazer right there. And I thought it was so funny that, right away she can't help it. She has to go back into her Scully mode.
I didn't notice that, but I need to go back and have a look at that. Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, that scene, like, it literally looks like a Superman scene, except she's going into Scully mode scene. Agent Scully mode scene. It's so good. It's such a great scene. And, it's the poor thing, she's just trying to go on vacation and everything keeps coming to her no matter what, which I thought was funny. Like, funny not in the haha, like, comedy type of thing, not like as comedic as, like, Jose Chung, but in that sense where it's just like, she just can't get away. But she's just like, all right, I guess this is what I gotta do.
And a nice contrast with Mulder on vacation in Never Again, when he very reluctantly went away for a few days, and he was always checking in when he was there.
Yeah, I did like in this way that he's more of a pest.
Yeah.
Kind of like, hey, what are you doing? What you up to? He's purposely making noise to make it sound like there's construction. All he's doing is like bouncing his basketball stuff. Like, I thought it was really cute. It was really funny.
And this is the one that introduces the recurring joke of the pencils in the ceiling as well.
Yes.
Because they go back to that image like quite a few times afterwards, don't they? What did you think about like the case itself? Obviously before in Schizogeny we had the young adults, the teenagers. Here we got a young girl. Were you a fan of her performance? And what did you think about the mother as well? I
thought it was a stronger performance, definitely. Right away you get the sense that there's something wrong with the girl. And later, I said to myself, maybe autistic. And then later in the episode, the police officer says, he uses the term, the not very,
toys in the attic.
Yeah, toys in the attic. Yeah, which, of course, Scully's like, oh, you mean autistic? Like, come on, guy. But so you do get that sense that there's something a little off about her, and that's why she always has the doll with her because it brings her some kind of comfort and stuff like that. It's funny because in the previous episode, like I said, there was no hint or no suggestion as to why this woman was able to control those trees. Whereas here, you get the suggestion that, oh yeah, the nursery school teachers suggest that, Melissa Turner is part of a lineage of witches, from back in the day. And, of course she's like, oh, they knew how to take care of those witches back then. Over exaggerating, but you get that hint of, okay, maybe there's something going on there that is, part of the unexplained. At least you get that much, you know what I mean? Whereas previous episode, you didn't get anything. You just, all of a sudden she can control trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And that small town intrigue, I think that's a bit of a Stephen King kind of hallmark.
The episodes in Maine, that's King's stomping
grounds.
Yeah, for every story that he does practically. So yeah.
Even if he was rewritten a lot, the episode includes all these tropes and things that people are familiar with his books and his film adaptations will be familiar with as well. So that's quite interesting, yeah. Yeah, and the thing with the girl as well, and she's like obsessed with this kind of, it's the hokey cokey, isn't it?
The hokey pokey, yeah.
Yeah, we hear that again and again. So, you know, that's kind of the old trick they've done before in episodes like Home, where you get a
creepy old-timey song.
Yeah, or a song that shouldn't be creepy, but
Right.
when you put it in the right place on a series like this, it becomes very creepy.
Yeah, unnerving, yeah.
Yes. One thing I've seen people say about this episode is that it's very derivative of, I don't know if you ever saw this series, I didn't until recently, but Friday the 13th, the series.
Yes, I used to watch that, yeah.
I think it was actually the pilot episode was about a talking doll, and it's on YouTube. It's worth checking out. As the episode goes on, you see that there's actually quite a lot of similarities with Chinga. So I think some people felt a bit disappointed that maybe King came in. You know, they felt like this was something they'd seen before,
right?
Because I believe there was also a Twilight Zone episode about a talking doll.
Oh yeah,
too.
yeah, the Talking Tina or something like that. Yeah, that was another creepy episode. I mean, at this point, it's like a trope. Twilight Zone was so much far before King started becoming famous, so you know he probably got inspired by that, and then Friday the 13th probably got inspiration from that, you know, and then Chucky, that's the other reference that's even referenced in the show. That's always referenced, but the idea of like, you know, creepy dolls and stuff like that, that's like a horror trope at this point. So I wouldn't say that King took the idea from Friday the 13th, the television series, you know. I would just say he just took an idea that's been around for years in terms of like, you know, horror tropes and stuff like that.
It definitely is an interesting comparison. I quite like the episode. I sort of see the flaws with it. I think the tone is a bit all over the place at times, but I can kind of go with it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you definitely see that because when you learn the history that, you know, King wrote a certain draft and then Carter went in to fix it, it didn't sound like they were working together on it, so you could see why the tone goes all over the place, because I would imagine King probably made it way darker than what Carter would have liked, so that's why he probably went in and changed some of the Mulder-Scully interactions and ended up using the more lighter interactions for them to kind of lighten up the tone of the episode, you know.
All right, that's probably a fairly decent note to end on, unless you had any other like favorite moments or anything, Tanya.
Just one little note: the
sure.
cop that works with Scully is the cop from the Bleeping Alien Jose Chung episode.
He's a good actor, isn't he? I think.
Yeah, I'm sure they used him before, but I know I was watching it and I was like, oh, that's a Bleeping Alien, that's him.
And not only that, but he turns up in Unrequited, and he's like a right-wing militia terrorist in like the compound where the dogs come out and chase them. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I don't remember that at all, but I recognized him right away in this episode.
And the guy on the trawler, like the old man,
yes,
was the old detective from Squeeze and Tombs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He actually looks a bit younger here. It's always fun when you spot somebody that pops up in a different role in the series, isn't it?
Yeah, when they use their like pool of actors again in different roles. I always like to look out for that, definitely.
All right, Tanya. Thank you very much. Always good to talk to you.
Yes, same here.
So tomorrow's episodes are Kill Switch and Bad Blood. In the meantime, everyone, you can find us in the usual places. We're on Twitter at the X_cast. You can find our page in our group on Facebook if you search for Xcast. But until next time, trust no one.